What is up, YouTube? Back in the garage again, and the primary is completely disassembled because I have a whopping 4 days to get this bike done. Then I realized I don't know if I'm supposed to put fluids in this if it's going into the show on Saturday. So if I can get it running, I will, but it's really going to be a time crunch. I wanted to jam away on this weekend. It was gorgeous out on Sunday. Saturday was colder than cold, let's just say that. So we flip-flop. I got the van back at the house now. A Falcon's dropped off for a little bit because that's the least of my worries at this moment. Just got the last box of parts that I need to assemble this motor, and it's all apart. I thought we were ready to slap the primary on, but when I was rotating the kicker gear over, it returned to 3/4 and then kind of stopped. So I also want to do it right the first time. I don't want to slap it together and then have to take it apart again later on down the line. So I ripped it apart now. I think what was happening was, oh, actually, let me bring you guys over to this side. Here's my thrust washer. It's split. I don't know how good of condition that was. I did have a double stack of O-rings. I put the squared off O-ring back in there. It seems to work much better. We'll find out. I'm gonna slap this back together now for the last time. Second time sucks, but I wanna do it right. On the kicker shaft, essentially, I got everything bolted up right now, and it feels really good. There's no thrust washer in here, but no resistance. On the other one, it was good 80% of the way, but at the top end, it looked like it was moving, and when I was editing the kickstart video, it looked like the bushing actually walked out. So I think I had too many washers, the O-rings that I put in, since I didn't use the factory ones. Might have bit me in the ass. So now I'm chasing it down. I put the squared off O-ring back in already. So I'm gonna take this Kickstarter off, throw some new lock tabs on. I might film this and time lapse it. It might not make it into the video because I just did the primary. I was happy with everything else when I was re-watching what I just did, doing the editing. Everything else I'm confident with, except the fact that the kicker didn't return all the way. So that's where we're at. It's been a long time since I could work with the garage open, but let me turn you guys around. I'll throw you up on the tripod, time lapse this. Like I said, you might see it, you might not, or with some movie magic, you might come back and the whole primary will be back together, button this up, and you can keep jamming away. But the problem I'm running into, I couldn't do any work on the rear wheel because I need to get in here to get the kicker gear or Kickstarter gear back assembled. So let's not waste any more time. We'll get jamming on this thing. bringing you guys around to the other side of the bike real quick. Obviously the kicker cover is not actually bolted in. Just got the kicker shaft sitting here. Before, when I rotated the motor over it all, this would spring up and then bind up about here. It should return all the way back. Before it would stop about here, and then there's a little bit of tension on here. It's because I put 2 O-rings in there. It was binding up on the O-rings. It probably would have been okay, but when I pulled it apart to investigate, this is what my thrust washer looked like. Not good. I was unable to find one of these this weekend, so jammed it back together. Like I said, this is floating. We're going to replace all of this next, but I'm going to put the primary cover on. Keep going on the time lapse here because I don't have time to talk through it. So time lapse, enjoy. You'll see what you can see. If not, sorry. And there we have it. Primary's back on. Still got a couple more dressed up parts to put on there, but not that big of a deal. Well, the mic died. I should have left the camera on while I flip-flopped this bike around, but we are back up in the air the right way on the bench. So motor is done, cam chest is done, push rods are done, primary is done. Now we're on to the sprocket shaft side. I was also waiting on the gasket for this on the main shaft, and we got to grease this up a little bit, but this is in and installed and working. Got a new chrome spring, so it'll be a black cover with a big chrome spring here. And then we can start messing around with the oil tank. Still got to drive the Speedo drive down here and then lay out the wiring and the oil lines, but we are one day closer. Bike is up in the air. I'm going to keep jamming away on this. I think I'm going to button this up for tonight, and that's about it. I rebuilt the carb at work today on my lunch break, so that's ready to drop back on. Got a super freshened up Bendix, nothing fancy. Did not do a thorough video. That was the first time I've ever done it. Really not much to them. Very, very, very simple carburetors. Got the foot peg stuff coated, ready to go on. So now we're just kind of racing the clock here, other than wiring and oil lines. But after that, it's really just bolting parts together. So let's finish up this. Waiting all day for this crappy little gasket that won't seal. That's going to rip. And some special screws. So on the motor, there's not really all that much to this part. Another gasket to gasket glue. This will sit on here. Grease up this seal. This goes after the gasket. This is actually a paper one. A lot of the new ones are coated and they usually split when I put them on. I'm going to coat the crap out of this. Then we're going to slap it together. What am I going to use here? I'm actually going to use some case sealer on this gasket instead of just the gasket glue, because I've had so many of these bust out on me, which is fine. But what's wrong with a little case sealer? That should work just as well. I'm trying to keep this away from the grease that's on here. That's really all I'm doing. Making a big old mess of this, but we're going to walk this around the gasket. If you're particular, wear gloves. I'm not. So we'll slap this around on here. Get this gasket nice and coated. Man, it's crazy to me. Waiting on parts for 4 days, especially coming into the weekend. Not that I expected it to show up over the weekend, but waiting on parts for so long, parts show up and everything just kind of jams together super fast. Grab some grease here. Now, we already got a ton of grease on the main shaft, but we do need a little bit of grease on this inner seal. Trying not to get the outside all that much, but just enough to help this slide over the shaft. I have not had the best of luck with these parts actually sealing up really well, so we'll see what happens this time. You never know. Maybe this is the one that won't leak all over the place. I'm not hooking up a Speedo cable because I don't have one, and I'm not putting a Speedo on here. However, I'm hoping that Speedo drive won't leak. If it pisses from there and makes a big mess, we'll address that down the line. But then we got our little screws here. Like I said, in this case, I've already torqued all of these, so it's not that big of a deal. We're going to run the brand new hardware with the little lock washers. Not that I think it's going to make all that much of a difference, but why not just use all the new stuff in the kit, provided they thread in okay. Just loosely get all these started first before I lock it down. Trying not to block you guys too much here. Hopefully this is looking... I actually never even checked the camera to see if you were pointed in the right direction. Yeah, you can see what's happening. You're in good shape. It's like I planned that. Okay. Like I said, in my experience, these gaskets usually split, hence the gasket sealer. But I figured the combination of gasket sealer with some case sealer might actually help. Just like that. So that was the end of that part. Now we're going to grease up the outside of the sprocket. Like I said, we're running a 24 on this one. So we're going a little bit bigger. That should definitely help on the gear ratio. Then we'll drive this down into the seal. Like I said, make sure these are greased up because you're going to fight that seal when you go to press this in. So you want grease on the seal, you want grease on the sprocket. Like so. Then we need a lock washer, main shaft lock washer. We'll drop on like that because we don't want this falling out. If you're super peculiar about oil leaks, you can thread seal these a little bit too. Hopefully, this will be the last time. So you got a shouldered edge, you got a flat edge. You put the shoulder in. Now, when I go to tighten this, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait a little bit until I get the chain on for final torque. Or you can drape the chain around. We should be all right. Let's do that. Back wheel's on now. Obviously, this isn't going to be the final assembly for this, but just having that chain on there will stop this from free spinning and let me torque this down before we get around to doing the final torque assembly. Just make sure this loops once, like so. Grab the impact. Give me enough. Give me enough. Make sure the chain doesn't slide off like it wanted to right there. Now we got a sprocket. Let's keep going on this. We'll button this side up first. Sprocket's wrapped around, wheels roughly in place. That's all going to change soon, but that's okay. Oh, shit. I might need to grab a chain. We'll see. We might get lucky. I just remembered that when I did this, I got a stock length chain. That one might actually be a little bit short for the 24 tooth. So that's cool. Totally forgot about that. We're going to grease up this kicker shaft like so. This is really final assembly stuff. I don't need to do this right now. Pull your chain up so we got clearance here. I'm not going to do final bolt torque or anything on this. I'm just kind of laying this out roughly so we can get a quick visual. This one's mainly for me. I'll make sure I got the right decision. Normally I like running the crusty old springs. I don't really care about them all that much, but in this case I figured this was going to be a nice little addition here because the actual kicker gear is also black. So that'll kind of sit on here just like that. And we got some new chrome hardware for that too. So aesthetically, I think that's a pretty good fit there. Now, clean up some of this crap. Figure out what to do next. Let's get the rear wheel in. I'm going to try the rear wheel minus the chain. If I can get the chain to work, we're going to run with it. If I can't, gotta get a chain tomorrow. Alright, we got a spacer that needs to go on here. Which means wheel's gonna slide back and out-ish as best we can. Drop the spacer on. It's got the biter teeth on it. Like so. It's also got slots in it. Come on. This will drop in between the swing arm and the wheel. Ooh, put that on backwards. My bad. So bite into the drum and the slots go into the swing arm. Like so. Push the drum in, yank this through. So like I said, the spacer on the drum is actually keyed, essentially, to drop into the swing arm, just like that. So make sure that this gets roughly put in place, which should be pretty close to flush with the axle plate. Now, we'll just give this a quick little visual. Make sure we get this lined up as close as possible instead of how we had it before. All of these look good here. Still a ton of grease on this. Try this again. Oh, much better. It must have just been crooked last time. You shouldn't have to drive this in like crazy. Grab our chrome axle spacer. Like I said, it shouldn't be a loose fit, but it shouldn't be a crazy tight fit either. You essentially want all of this to lay out roughly how it's going to land in the bike, like so. Much better fit. It's amazing what happens when you actually use the right settings, not settings, but have things adjusted the way they're supposed to be. Just grab an open end right now. So on the Ironheads, you do have a slot in the axle that we're also going to line up onto the swing arm, like so. Come down just a hair more. A little snug. Like so. Now you can see, hopefully, that that's seated. Then we'll come back up in the air. So now that rear wheel is where we want it, outside of the chain adjusters. Still got to rip down this outer nut to hold that sleeve in for the brake plate. A little bit of drag on the brake is okay. I'm not too concerned with that one yet. Then I just need a big old washer on this side. You guys are right in my way. 11/16 on the brake. Just doing a quick one. Come around to this side. Now, wheel is roughly set up. Obviously nothing is fully aligned yet. I don't know how far I'm going to go with this at this current moment. Maybe I can drape the chain over and kind of see what we're looking at here. Get a rougher visual, make sure everything should kind of sort of line up. But it looks like, yeah, I'll put the master link in on this side. while this is laid out close before we go to do any chain or axle adjustments. At this point, we're just trying to make everything work together. So that's in. Here's the outer. I'm not putting the final clip in yet. All I've done so far is grab this, slap that on here. Man, this thing's finally starting to look like a bike. There's a ton of work. Primary's done. This side's pretty much done. All I'm going to do is loosely lay. I need a bigger washer underneath the axle, but I'm going to loosely lay this out for right now. Final assembly, final torque we can do later. What are you grinding on here? Oh, chain's dragging still on the case because we don't have any tension on this. Maybe we should do that. Just zip these down a little bit, put a little tension on that chain. Oh man, forgot about the brake plate. Okay, you guys will not partake in the axle adjustment on this side because I can't get a speed wrench on it. Why? Well, the brake arm gets in the way. I don't want to... do I? No. That won't really help me all that much. So hopefully I can get this down enough where it'll start threading by hand. The outer edge of these chain adjusters were a little on the worn side, which is fine. But guess what? We're finally at roller status. I know there's a million things to change. And I still got to run the oil lines and the electrical and all those things that I probably should have done this weekend when I had a little bit of time. But it was super nice. I mean, I still have the door open. It's going on 7:30, 8 o'clock or something. And I'm sweating right now. As hard as that is to believe. This is a brand new chain, so a little on the tight side right now is okay. I would never run a chain this tight, typically. But just for the rough mock-up component of today, this kind of makes sense to me. Give it a quick visual, make sure the drive line's right. Like, this actually needs to come out a hair. There we go. That one's looking pretty good. Obviously, when you tighten it, well, not obviously, I guess, but when you tighten down that final axle, there's way too much tension on this right now, but I wanted it up and out of the way. Make sure everything's spinning the way it's supposed to. A little bit of pressure on the brake. We might even have brakes. Sweet. I think I got this on the right way. If I remember correctly, the linkage comes up from this one down here. So we'll address that next. Just kidding. It's getting late and I just realized there's dinner waiting for me and I don't want to get in trouble. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. We're going to end this one here. Sorry about the time lapse on the primary, but crap happens. Crap comes up. I had to wait on parts just like everybody else would if you were doing this build on your own. Parts showed up and now it's a mad rush scramble. I was hoping to have the bike roughly in this condition over the weekend. And my goal was to be messing around with oil lines and wiring today. We fell short. Parts took longer to get here than anticipated, and I broke more things than I expected. So roughly this is kind of what we're looking at. This is the shocks. We're about an inch over ground level right now. The ones I had, I just grabbed these ones off the other Ironhead, that Arlen Ness frame that I had upstairs. They're about an inch longer than the two other sets I had here. I'm digging it. So let me know what you guys think below. Lots more to do, so we will be jamming away on this. Wish me luck. Like, comment, subscribe, all those fun things. Help me hit that 800 mark so I can keep being motivated to come out here and do this all over again once this bike is done. We'll try and do another chopper for the next show.